Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Town of Lexington's Planning Commission meeting. This is our normal monthly meeting, has been held at 8 a.m. Wednesday, July 24th, 2019. The meeting is being broadcast live and will air on the town's informational channel 1301 several times during the week. It's also available on the town's website. I am Keith Frost, your Planning Commission Chair, and I will ask the other members to please introduce themselves.
Good morning, I'm Frank Berry.
Good morning, Sammy Hendricks.
Good morning, I'm Brian Amick.
Good morning, I'm Jeannie Michaels.
Morning, Roscoe Kaufman.
Good morning, I'm Brett Poole, Town Administrator.
Good morning, I'm Brad Cunningham, Town Attorney.
And I'm Karen Henner, the Assistant Municipal Clerk.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask Vice Chair Berry if he will lead us in invocation.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this new day. Thank you for the rain, which was much needed, as well as this cooler temperature we're having this morning. Be with those who protect our country and keep us safe. Be with this commission as we plan the future of the town. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. All right, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you very much. We'll now call the meeting to order. First item of business, we have no deletions to our agenda this morning, as I'm aware. All right. First item is approval of our May 22nd, 2019 minutes. You should have received those last night at our work session.
So move.
All right.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Unanimous, thank you very much. All right, first item of new business this morning is sketch plan approval for townhome subdivision located in 100 block of Parker Street. John?
Good morning. Kevin Steelman is requesting sketch plan approval for a townhome project being planned on two parcels located in the 100 block of Parker Street. The project will have 100 units on 12.5 acres. The allowable density of residential development is determined by the classification of the street providing access to the property. Parker Street is classified as a local road, which allows up to 8 units per acre for townhome projects. The proposed development will have 8 units per acre. Properties with PR2 zoning do not have a minimum lot size as long as the homes can meet the setback and driveway requirements. The project meets the setback requirements with 20-foot front and rear setbacks, as well as 10-foot setbacks between individual townhome buildings, not individual townhomes. According to the submitted plan, adequate driveway parking is provided for each unit if the garage spaces are included in the calculation and if the 42 front-loaded units have no more than 2 bedrooms. The project also includes 48 overflow parking spaces scattered throughout the subdivision. The town's land development ordinance requires at least 20% of the area to be dedicated open space, with at least 50% of the open space being active recreation space. Project is required to have 2.5 acres of open space with at least 1.25 acre of active open space. It is proposed to have 4 acres of open space with 1.3 acres of active open space. No information has been provided on the amenities that will be provided to meet the active open space requirement. Plan shows sidewalks on both sides of most of the streets and spaces reserved for the town to install the Gibson Pond walking trail through the project area. Access to the development will be obtained through a single entrance on Parker Street. A traffic impact study was not provided for this project, but the project will impact the intersection of South Lake Drive and Parker Street. The This intersection is identified in the long-range transportation plan as needing improvements to increase capacity. Mr. Steelman is here to further review the project and/or answer any questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions of John? All right. If not, Mr. Stillman, would you come forward?
Thank you. I'm Kevin Steelman. I'm a land tech. So this is our proposed project. I think a couple of the points that John made, one is on transportation. Obviously, that's something that we have to consider. We've met with Randy before we made the submittal, and then we've also engaged a transportation engineer to do the study, but he has to wait till school's back in to do the counts. So I think what we were trying to do is get the sketch plan in and get your feedback or comments on that. And then we would work with Randy and DOT and the transportation engineer to work out any sort of improvements that may be needed. We would have completed it, but before we submitted, but we had to wait on school to get back in. On the open space, I've got a document that I sent in. So our plan for the open space is to do, we developed in Lake Carolina in the Northeast and where I live in Harborside, and we have multiple green spaces throughout that neighborhood, which are village greens, and kids play, dogs play, adults, throw football or whatever they do on these spaces. And so our plan was to emulate what we did at Lake Carolina. So I've given you a few pictures of those amenities, and we're planning to do that adjacent to the town's park. We're going to set aside the land for the town's planned walkway that'll go all the way around the mill pond if the mill pond comes back. And so we're going to try to access or accentuate that amenity that's not on our property, but whether it's woods or whether it's a pond, it'll be a very scenic place for the amenities. So we're trying to give all our residents the opportunity to have some active open space there. We'll also plan a dog park. We had a broker focus group on Monday and just asked all of them what they thought people would be looking for in amenities, and the number one thing was, believe it or not, a dog park, which surprises me somewhat, but I think people like getting out and playing with their dogs. So our plan is to pretty much make as much of that green space between the townhome units and the pond active as possible. The other thing I wanted you to see is there's basically three product types. There's front-loaded townhomes, and there's pictures there that our builder is going to be Eastwood Homes. They're headquartered out of Charlotte, but they have an active division here in Columbia. But they've got three product types. A front-loaded townhome that's on the perimeter of the property where you would have driveways access from the front of the property. And then we have interior, we have two different alley-loaded product types, or actually I guess three, a two-story and then a three-story kind of traditional, and then they've got another one that's a very modern or contemporary-looking unit that has outdoor verandas where we're planning to put those near the mill pond where people would be able to go out on that patio area and look out over town and the mill pond. So three different product types, probably starting in the low 200s, going up to the very high 200s, and maybe into the 300s price point. So I think that is really all I wanted to make sure you understood, but I'm, of course, here to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Steelman?
Mr. Chair, might I ask a question for
Yes.
clarity? So if you're gonna have, or the plan is to have rear loading on your garages and use the alley concept, would you restrict parking on your front streets?
No, our plan is, I think John mentioned, we've got like 48 parking spaces scattered throughout. So the idea was that in front of all of those alley units, we would have parking that would be delineated in the street so that guests of the people across the street that are in the front load units or whoever can park on the street.
I think you're misunderstanding my question. I understand there'd be parking on the alleys, but on the streets that actually front to the houses, would there be parking on
Yes.
those streets?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so that's the plan, is because you don't have the driveways, is to utilize that side of the street, or if you've got alleys on both sides, then you could park on both sides of the street. But, of the main front street.
Would it be parking like
Parallel.
this way, parallel?
No, just
in front?
parallel, yeah. We did it in Harborside, again, where I live in Lake Carolina, where we just made the street section a little bit wider, and when you get people parking in the street, it calms down traffic, because you have to kind of slow down. Yeah, Saluda River
Yeah.
Club has a lot of on-street parking too. So we tried to just make sure that there was plenty of guest parking. A lot of times when you have, this kind of density and you don't have room for company to park when they come. So we tried to take advantage of open space throughout and on-street parking throughout to get almost 50 guest parking places.
When you say on-street, you're referring to the parallel parking spaces you've designated. I think when Britt means on-street, he's talking about, how about if somebody pulls up in front of their house where there's not lines? Is there a restriction there?
We could deal with that in the covenants if that's something that y'all don't want to happen, other than in designated areas.
I mean, that has become a significant issue in the town, especially with minimal road widths, with parking and additional visitors, folks parking the road, and if you get two cars across from each other, you're all of a sudden in a significant issue of getting vehicles through.
Understood, yeah. So we would just deal with that through the covenants and have clearly designated the places where you can park, and then obviously through signage or covenant, identify the areas you cannot park.
How wide, I notice you have your right-of-ways identified on your sketch plan. How wide is the pavement?
I don't know right off the top of my head. I'd have to ask the engineer, but it's wider than the typical is 25 feet back of curb to back of curb. I think it's another, I think it's another 9 feet, which would allow you to have that parallel parking space, and still have the 2 lanes of traffic open, but I can certainly, get back to you with that.
And I'm identifying one area in front of one row of houses that has parallel parking. That's on one street. You come in and take the first left, I see parallel parking. Other than that, I don't identify it on any other street. Okay. So I guess that's my question, is the remainder of these roads, if we know what the road width will be.
That's the only one that's a full right-of-way. The others are reduced right-of-way. I think they're 30-foot right-of-way, so there is not parking in front of the units on those, but you've got the alleys in the rear of all those units.
Would there be a way to make that on that road?
You could, I would have to look at just the geometry of the unit. At the time we did this, we didn't have the builder's product yet. So now we know how deep his product is, so we know what we're working with to make driveways work and all that. To make sure we're meeting all of your parking requirements and then providing additional parking.
So the alleyways would be used for, I'm assuming, trash pickup, recycle pickup, things of that nature. We all know 2 cars are more than what people typically have. There's 2 spaces back there. That third one comes through there and parks, parallel parks, blocks somebody's driveway, or blocks the alley where the trash trucks can't get through. And then the gentleman behind you is getting phone calls, they missed my whole street. What's the plan to prevent that from happening?
Well, I think the only thing you can do is, again, through HOA covenant enforcement and signage, just clearly mark the areas where you can park. And typically on the alley-loaded units, they're going to have a two-car garage and two-car spaces in the driveway that we're,
Two-car storage unit.
yeah, we'll have a two-car storage unit and then two-car parking spot on the driveway. That's the plan.
Yeah.
Well, the builder product is going, we're either going to have to, on the front-loaded garage units are the only ones that are in question. The others all have 4 spaces. So the units that are on the perimeter that are front-loaded, you see in the renderings, ideally they would be a one-car garage with one-car wide driveway so that you're not just seeing just a sea of garage doors and driveways. So either the builder will build product that's 2-bedroom on those and we'll have the 2 parking spaces, or we'll have to modify the product and go to a 2-car garage, very garage dominant elevation, and meet your parking requirement. Either that or we would have to go seek a variance from or the builder would seek a variance Board of Zoning Appeals, I suppose, to get a permit for something with fewer parking spaces.
Okay. Glad you brought that. I had that circled to ask, John. Any other questions?
Clarify for me again, please, the recreation green space. That's in conjunction with the town's park, you say?
So we basically, what we would have is there's pictures there of it. It'll be just a big green. There'll be some landscaping around it, some sort of gazebo or gathering building, chairs, benches. One of the parks that I provided a picture of is directly in front of my house, and it's a place that during the day the kids run around and play and do whatever they do, and then at night all the adults end up bringing their dogs out there. We let the dogs play and we stand around and talk to each other. Now, it's not a true dog park because it's not fenced, but our plan would be to provide an area that would be a fenced area that's a true dog park, and then just a big green area that's a multi-purpose field where you can have farmers markets or events, and ideally we would be connecting our sidewalks from in the community to the ultimate trail that's built town, so that we're engaging with that mill pond and the improvements y'all are going to make around it if that pond ever gets rebuilt.
Follow-up questions? I guess, how does that, and help me understand how that fits into what the town's ordinance describes and identifies and expects as active green space?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to get more active than kids playing on a field and adults chipping golf balls and doing whatever you do on this big multi-purpose open space. I mean, it's actively used on a daily basis. So I do know that if you're thinking more along the lines of a clubhouse and a swimming pool, it's just not economically feasible for 100 units to support, and it's underutilized. So you would be tacking on $300 to $400 annually onto each owner's HOA dues to manage a pool that they're not likely to use.
Well, I live in a subdivision that has 119 homes, and we have a pool that's used a fair bit.
Yeah.
So, and in a similar price range,
Yeah.
as you've identified. So I might say it is, or could be. I guess our ordinance does define active green space as swimming pool, tennis courts, some physical amenity other than a green open space. And I think that's kind of what we're looking for. I'm not sure you can use a dog park for chipping golf balls, at least I don't want to. So.
Well, it's two separate amenities.
Okay.
There's a dog park that's fenced, and then there's a non-fenced green space that would have probably a fire pit and, just places for people to go hang out.
You've mentioned HOA several times. I'm assuming that the HOA will be maintaining the grounds on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I mean, our plan would be for this, because of the prototypical buyer, it's probably gonna be a maintenance-free lifestyle, so the HOA probably will do all maintenance, yard maintenance and maintenance of common areas. So it would be, entrance, these amenities we're talking about, and all the people's yards. At least the front yards. The backyards could get a little difficult depending on, whether there are fences and things, but certainly all the visible areas in the neighborhood will be under the maintenance of the HOA.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Yes.
question for Mr. Stillman, and good morning. The comments that Mr. Hanson read about the background, the last statement is about access and indicates that the intersection at Parker Street is identified in the long-range transportation plan as needing improvements. Has the developer considered any improvements to the intersection?
Yeah, the very first thing we did was meet with Randy and try to understand, is this intersection a problem? I know there's a lot of traffic, and Highway 6 is 2 lanes, and Parker connects 6 to 1, so I was thinking to myself, this is probably an area that could be problematic. And there's an existing problem there, in that Parker Street doesn't have a separate right-hand turn lane. For 2 lanes, if you got somebody waiting to turn left, it backs everybody up. So the preliminary, without any sort of traffic study, the preliminary thought was that at a minimum, we would be looking at probably creating a right-hand turn lane on Parker Street onto Highway 6 to alleviate some of that, and possibly doing something down at the other end where Parker meets Schwartz. Parker doesn't go all the way to 1. It has a weird intersection with Schwartz. There may be some sort of improvement that's needed there as well. We're studying both ends. Again, after meeting with Randy and getting scope worked out with DOT, we're going to be doing traffic counts at both ends and looking at what improvements may be needed. And we're certainly planning on making some improvements. We just don't know what those are yet. But in all likelihood, it would be creating a right turn lane off of Parker Street.
I think it would be beneficial for us to see what is planned in that regard.
Yeah, well, I know that we have, the traffic count scheduled. I guess school goes back like the 17th or somewhere, or 18th, I think, is maybe 19th even. And then not the first week of school, but the next week we're doing the traffic counts, I know. So I would think we would be able to have a traffic study back in very short order after that. So, if we need to, we'd certainly be willing to just come back and have that study with us and maybe more fully develop some amenity plans for you. Otherwise, I just can't answer the question other than to know we are planning something, and it'll be worked out with Randy and DOT.
That's what you would base all your improvements on, is
Yeah.
what you find at the traffic study.
Yeah, and there's some things that we can do, like putting in a turn lane that doesn't require us to buy any right-of-way, is economically feasible. Putting in a roundabout or a stoplight is not. And so, we didn't create the problem. The problem's there. So we're certainly willing to contribute to the fix.
You're going to be contributing to the problem.
Well, maybe.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
On looking at the drawing, you can make it out, the 100-year floodplain. Is the water quality basin in the same plane?
It's above that elevation. So it's at a higher elevation. So that area has been studied, and I think the 100-year flood elevation is like 298. And there's a 298 contour line that runs along approximately where the town's proposed trail is, and we picked up that alignment from drawings that Randy gave us. But that approximates where that flood elevation is, and our detention will all be above that elevation. So,
And lot 76.
that's well above. It's probably 10 feet above. It comes up really fast. When we get to the rear of the property and we fall off towards that water, it's pretty steep topography back there. So yeah, we pulled all of our lots way back away from the flood. Again, trying to create a lot of green space back there and trying to just make all of our open space functional and interconnected to what the town's planning.
Any follow-up? I do have a couple, and I'm glad Roscoe went into talking about the stormwater. You've identified this as a water quality pond, which I'm assuming means you're accounting for the use of the old mill pond as your detention?
No, it wouldn't be detention. I think based on the volume of water that does flow through that mill pond basin, that this property is exempt from treating quantity but not quality. So
exempt from?
From DHEC, there's if your ultimate discharge is a water body that can handle the flows, then generally, at least many projects that we've done, and maybe our engineer can answer this better, that as long as you meet quality, then you don't have to meet the quantity.
Okay. At this point, unfortunately, we don't have a water body.
Yeah,
so
right.
that may create an issue with DHEC.
Yeah.
Just as a thought. I mean, I know there's plans to rebuild,
Right.
but at this point, that doesn't exist. So I don't know how they will
But there's still
count, that county or DHEC will expect you to treat that water
right,
and handle
and
that.
I don't know that either. What we've done right now is that what they've designed may be big enough to do both. I just don't know.
And that was going to be my next question, is whether that pond was designed sufficiently large enough to accommodate both.
Yeah, so preliminary, he's saying it was just treating water quality, but that's based on the fact that typically when that's a pretty major drain that runs through there. It comes from Gibson Pond, and then the stream goes under 6 and then through there and continues on, I guess, ultimately to a river somewhere. So typically when you're in that condition, as long as you meet the quality requirements, then that's all the DHEC requires.
Hey, you're reading my notes.
No, we backed out. I think there's a total of 4 acres of open space, but that quarter acre or whatever is not lots, but it's not what we're using to meet your open space requirements.
Yes.
I got you.
And one last question as far as related back to the green space. You indicated that you were going to leave space open for the town's expansion of a potential park or walkway around the pond. So are you not intending to construct that area of the walkway, or you're just going to leave that property open?
Well, we don't know exactly. We're going to give the whatever land the town needs, and we would certainly. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's concrete. I don't know if it's 20 feet wide or if it's 8 feet wide. So we can't just write a blank check that we'll build that part of the walkway, but we're certainly willing to help in that. And I think we talked about generally, and Randy didn't make any commitments, or John either, but we talked about possibly if we're ready to go and you're not, that we may just build the trail, a trail there where we clear it, grade it, and use some sort of loose stone, and then when you come along and do something more permanent, then you're just improving an existing trail. But in the interim, there's a trail there that our owners can use. So a lot of that's gonna come down to, timing and.
So it would be something you would deed over to the town?
Yeah, we would deed, if that's what you need, is to have the actually underlying title, or we would grant an easement, whichever.
I think we'd rather have the title, but we
Yeah.
can deal with an easement.
Yeah, either way, whatever ultimately Brad says he wants, that's what we do.
Is that, then begs the question, John just asked yet again, then is that green space, is that included in your green space calculation, so that when you deed it over to the town, you're now not meeting the ordinance?
I don't think so. The total site is only 12 acres, and we've got 4 acres of open space, so, that trail is less than a tenth of an acre, so
Okay.
Now, if you wanted us to deed the trail and everything down to the water line, then that could, because if we deed you the trail and we keep what's on the other side, then we've now created a parcel that's somewhat landlocked, one, and then, I don't know exactly how to deal with all that, but all I would say is that we're here to be the town's partner and do whatever you need to do to facilitate getting that trail built.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Steelman?
Mr. Frost,
sir.
It's my understanding that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Stillman, that this is here for information, because there's other stuff that has to be done, and kind of let the planning commission take a look at it.
Yeah, we were looking for feedback. I think, if the best thing here to do is to defer action on this until your September meeting, when we have a traffic study and we can more fully develop amenity plan, that's fine. We can make that timeline work, and we certainly will attempt to respond to anything that you've asked us.
But furthermore, what I was gonna say is, not to say what the committee wants to do, but if y'all do wanna do some sort of deferral, I've got a list of things that I'd like to recommend be included, to answer some of those questions, because they're difficult to see, and if you don't mind, I'll read those.
That's fine. It may be, you may have more than I've got on my list I've
Okay.
started.
So one is to identify the parking specifically for each unit, and the expected number of rooms for that, bedrooms for that unit, so that we can judge properly whether the parking is there. And also to indicate areas where parking restrictions would be in place. That's so that the planning commission could then decide to make those by fiat, basically, so that our police could enforce them further than just the HOA, which is a possibility you have open to yourself. Get more into the specifics of the green space. Where is the dog park gonna be? Where is the green field? What are you counting? What are you not counting? Show the connection to the trail, or connections if there are multiple ones, which from your description, it sounds like there might be multiple ones.
We were planning multiple.
And then one thing that I think we probably need to talk with amongst staff, and you, is maybe the visibility of the pump station. I noticed that you have it right at the end of a hammerhead, and that could be an eyesore, and I think there's some things that we could do to work with the developer to try to make sure that looks better for your residents and looks better for the citizens that are walking on the trail.
And that location is very flexible. Just again, back on topography of the site, there are multiple places that are that same elevation, so we could move it around a good bit without really affecting anything.
So those would be my suggestions, and I'm sure you guys have more, but I just wanted to throw those out from a staff perspective. Those are things that could help us look at the plan and understand what's actually being requested.
Yes, thank you. Again, I had most of those on my list. When we go back to the amenities, I would like you to not only identify green space, where it's at, but also work with John to look at the ordinance and identify what can be done to meet the active requirements. I had road improvements as one as well that you guys are going to be working with Randy, and I might even at some point have Randy come up and talk a little bit about what the LTIP has identified for this intersection, just for the record, so that folks know what it's identified. Stormwater, just making sure you reach out to the county or DHEC and make sure they're comfortable with the pond being rebuilt. And then I had unit size as well as one on here. So any other questions or thoughts for the developer?
Unit size, I'm sorry, but you're
Yeah,
speaking
bedroom, number of bedrooms,
count,
so that we
not
can relate
square
that. No,
footage.
not square footage, just
Okay.
so we can relate back to parking. That relates back to the
Sure.
parking spaces. All right, any other suggestions, comments, thoughts?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would, Mr. Stillman has heard all the comments and so forth. I don't really see a need to vote. I think we could just ask him to, if you'd like to withdraw action requested today and come back to us with all of these discussion items that we brought up, and I don't really think we need to vote.
I'm not sure I disagree with that, and I think
He's willing to-
I think he's indicated he's willing to come back and
Whatever best works within your procedures and makes it easiest on you, I'm happy to do that.
yeah, I mean, I think it gives us a more holistic view of what your project is, rather than kind of a preliminary sketch, so that when we do take up some final action, we know exactly what we're addressing. So I think that would, from your perspective, I think NR is maybe the best thing at this point. I guess before you do that real quick, I would like, Randy, if you would just come up and spend a minute talking about the improvements that the town has identified as part of the LTIP for the Parker Street and Highway 6 interchange.
Randy Edwards, Director of Transportation. In 2017, we developed the LTIP and the Local Transportation Improvement Plan, and LTIP as it's commonly referred to, identified 30 locations throughout the town, of which one of those was Parker Street at the intersection of Chapman Drive. It also identified, as Kevin mentioned, Parker Street at Schwartz intersection. That is, the LTIP already has traffic study associated with it that identified a right turn lane at Parker Street onto South Lake, as well as left turn lanes on South Lake, and widening. South Lake is currently between 30 and a half and 32 feet wide, which in order to get a left turn lane requires significant widening for a significant long portion. So that's what's identified at that location. The other location it's identified as is actually creating a more T intersection as opposed to a Schwartz continues through and Parker ties into it. And one of the things that Kevin's study is to be looking at is what his impact is to the movement at that location. We already are confident that the primary movement is from Schwartz to Parker, so it's odd to have that stop condition. There's some grade issues there as to whether or not that's can be addressed. But the idea would be that Schwartz from Railroad would come in and tee into that straight road that would properly met, DOT because it currently doesn't, to try and make that work. So those are the two things identified but in the LTIP, and we have had preliminary discussions with Kevin that not all, but something would most likely need to be addressed as part of his project. It is 100 units, which equates to basically 1,000 trips a day. There's also significant traffic on that road, so some type of a cost share or proportion then would be applicable or warranted.
And there's also some radius improvements as part of the Parker and Highway 6 interchange, or
Kevin didn't
intersection.
mention that, but we certainly mentioned that to him, that when we slice it up, we kind of spoke specifically about the Parker Street component. So whatever was necessary on the Parker Street side. What that does is it allows us, future projects, you know, if the town, whether it's the town or another development type project, can then come in and focus solely on South Lake and not have to then disturb Parker Street again. So that was discussed in detail.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so Mr. Steelman, I think you've, I guess, heard some of our concerns and thoughts and things that we may be, I think we would like to see as we move forward with considering some type of sketch plan. Is it your desire then at this point to withdraw the submittal, go back and do some fine tuning on that, and then bring it back once you have worked with some staff to identify exactly what will be included in the project?
Yes, sir, we'll do that, and we'll, you know, come back when the traffic study is complete and all the other, we can address all the other questions that you had, so you have full information to act on.
Okay. All right, that sounds great. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. All right, yes, sir.
One point, as you said, you got, you show three different widths of roads in there. I believe one 50-foot right-of-way, one a 30, and then an alley of 20 feet. From my perspective, I would like to know the actual road width we're talking about from safety standpoint, especially the ones that's got the right-of-way.
We'll be sure to, on the next
notes.
submittal, we'll notate the pavement section on each different right-of-way type. We'll be sure that's on the plan, very clear.
All right, thank you. All right. With that, we'll move on to item 2, which is annexation of property located at 702 West Main Street. John?
These should be a little bit easier to run through.
You hope.
I hope. Marshall Davis owns .69 acres located at 702 West Main Street and has petitioned to annex the property. A custom home builder is planning to construct a model home / sales office on the site. Properties in town near this one are zoned general commercial, and West Main Street is classified as an arterial road. The surrounding conditions and the intended use of the property, the same zoning and road classification are recommended for this parcel. And I forgot about this one being the one.
I know. We did have some discussion at the work session last night, and I guess with that, I will start that I do recognize that most of the properties adjacent to this one are general commercial. However, the project that's being proposed does fit within office commercial, and in an effort to maintain some control over potential changes in those projects and growth in the town, where I felt like it was appropriate to assign the office commercial, and if it changed and needed to be general commercial, then they could come back and request that.
Is that your motion?
So, but no, I'm just having discussion at this point. So if somebody, I just want to make sure anybody else doesn't have discussion on this one. But if not, if someone wants to make a motion, they're welcome to.
I'll make a motion to recommend that it's office commercial.
Okay. All right, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, item 3 is annexation of property located at 116 Pilgrim Point Drive. John?
Hold on a minute, I gotta make note of office commercial.
Thought you had done that already.
Henry Vincent owns a parcel located at 116 Pilgrim Point Drive and has petitioned to annex the property. A single-family home is being constructed on the site. Properties in town near this one are zoned protected residential, and Pilgrim Point Drive is classified as an RL6 road. The same zoning and road classification is recommended for this parcel.
All right, and as we discussed last night, after this, we have one open parcel and one occupied residence left in this neighborhood that has not been annexed. Correct, okay. All right, Any discussion? We have a
Second.
motion, and we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, item 4 is annexation of property located at 224 Autumn Lane. John?
Charles Harmon and Rachel Allen own 1.2 acres located at the corner of Autumn Lane and Christie Street, and have petitioned to annex the property. A single-family home is being planned on the site. Properties in town near this one are zoned industrial. That's because it's across from the railroad track. Autumn Lane and Christie Street are not currently classified. Due to the surrounding conditions and the intended use of the property, the recommended zoning is protected residential, and the recommended classification for both streets is limited local.
All right, any discussion? We have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All right, thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. That is unanimous as well. Thank you very much. All right, I think that concludes our, oh, well, no, I'm sorry.
Other business.
One other business
Two
items,
other
I'm sorry.
businesses. First, we discussed it a little bit last night with regard to doing some amendments, revisions to the land development ordinance and zoning ordinance, and Britt's here. I'll let him fill in the blanks a little bit better than I did last night, since he's been having the discussions with council about what their vision is, thinking is.
Yes, essentially what John said is correct. Council's task staff to come up with an RFP to bring in some outside experts in zoning and planning to do an overarching study of our land use and zoning ordinance, and then to make recommendations for potential changes so that we're possibly better dealing with growth and impacts that growth has, while keeping the way the town looks and operates. Well, I guess not operates from a traffic standpoint, but keeps the hometown feel. It takes those pressures into account. They discussed that at the retreat. They haven't officially taken action, though they have, other than to ask staff to prepare a document, which then they will review before we actually take action. But I expect that to happen in the next few months. And since that is very impactful of what the Planning Commission does, just wanted to make you guys aware of that. And then council also asked the Planning Commission to take a look at if there are any minor changes to make in the meantime, and we can get into the details of that, but I think you guys are aware of what they've asked for to be looked at, to just see if you think that there's value in doing that, while also understanding there's going to be a much larger comprehensive study that will take place and be implemented. I say implemented. Council will have to make that decision once they see the recommendations. That would be certainly in the driver's seat on that. And all that would come through the Planning Commission for recommendation, for justification of any changes and things like that. So I think it's something to be excited about. It's not something that is a study of that size does not take place in a month. It will be a long process, but I don't think longer than a year. That would be on the outside, I believe.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, John. I think you captured it pretty well last night. Did well. So, but I appreciate that. And we did kind of talk a little bit about it, and I think we would like for as staff is working to develop the information for council, to consider hiring a consultant. I think there are some things that we would ask staff to look at as far as interim measures, to bring back to us as a recommendation. So, and I don't know how much specifics you need as far as guidance on that, John, or if you guys want to come up with some, or do you want us to give you some very specific
As I
ideas?
mentioned last night, one of the struggles that I've had is coming to coalescing around certain ideas that everybody is going to be in agreement with. So yes, I would like some direction on that.
I think part of the discussion we had was as as we look forward to working with a consultant to identify land use specifically, while we're doing that in the interim, perhaps identifying some specific land uses that we want or want to move forward with, and those that we may want to postpone until we have a more definitive picture. And so I guess what our representation would be that any future projects that are brought into the town or ask for a zoning change, at this point, we limit those to PR1 until we reach a conclusion on what the consultant would like to do. At least that's a thought for something to consider as a proposal. So, anybody else have a thought or suggestion or have any strong disagreement with that? I want to make sure I want to speak for everybody as we move forward, but I think that seemed to be the consensus last night. So,
I have a second item of other business.
all right. Yes, sir.
Ready to move on. Last year, the developer for Bar Lake came in and gave you all an update on the dam reconstruction and construction of the amenity area for that subdivision, and we left with instruction from the commission that we not require them to, that we require the developer to give us periodic updates attached to when final plats are ready. They are proposing to final the plats in phase 2. They have provided us with a copy of a update on that they submitted to their current residents. I'll be happy to read it into the record, but I wanted to give this to you or let you know that dam construction is underway. It's expected to be completed this fall, and the amenity area is expected to be completed in the spring or summer of 2020. That's consistent with what they told you last year. With that, it would be our intention to go ahead and approve final plat in phase 2 unless you all want a specific update for him to come in and put it on the record.
Does anyone feel the need to have someone from the developer come back if they're still on the same timeline that we've already acknowledged? Wouldn't be a meeting if you did.
Should.
All right, so I don't think we hear any objection to proceeding on, John, without that. All right. Any other items from the commission? All right. Britt, anything from town's perspective?
Yes, sir. So Kathy Manis, the councilperson who's the liaison to the Planning Commission, as you well know, isn't able to be here today. She's representing the town at a National League of Cities event in Connecticut. And I know that she would want me, and I want to thank you guys and ladies for your service. I know that a lot of people see these meetings in the morning and don't realize that you also have work session meetings that happen at night the day before, and that can really disrupt a week, and I appreciate that effort. Couple of announcements, or more than a couple, but so at the amphitheater on Friday, we'll have the Flannel Fest, which is an all-ages concert, and when I read these bands' names, unfortunately, I think they're classified as classic rock now. They're tribute bands for Alice in Chains, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, and Pearl Jam. Tickets are $10 in advance and $15 at the gate. Again, that's Friday at 5 p.m. Mark your calendars for date night. We've got a movie coming up, Casablanca, Friday, August the 2nd at 8:30 p.m. It's a free event at the amphitheater. Let's Get Loud, Battle of the Bands, will take place Friday, August the 9th from 5:30, starting at 5:30 p.m. Tickets are $11, and all proceeds go to benefit the Muscular Dystrophy Association Summer Camp Program. If you can join us on Friday, August 30th at 7 p.m., we'll have a night of 70s and 80s rock and roll and featuring the Interstate Exiles. This is a free show presented by WMOG 98.5 FM. And of course, you can always go to the icehouseamphitheater.com website to get the full calendar. There's a lot more coming up. That's just a brief summary of the next few weeks. We've got the market at the Ice House in full swing. It's been a big success. It's grown a lot this year since it's moved. We have many, many vendors, more than double some weeks previous years. And those are every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., and then it ends on September 28th. So it's every Saturday until September 28th. And the market is primarily intended as a farmer, grower, and local artisan market. It's a community-friendly atmosphere to promote, support, and encourage local production while educating citizens on the benefit of eating local, fresh produce, supporting local artists, and the certified SC program. And you can also go to the market's Facebook page to learn more, see specific vendors, see pictures of vendors, goods, things like that. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anything else for the good of the commission?
I have
Yes,
a
sir.
question. Who does the market come under? That come under Mr. Walker's?
It does. He's the promoter for that.
I went there this past Saturday, and I'd like to tell him that several vendors told me how nice the town of Lexington is in helping them unload their cars and so forth, specifically women that said they had big old coolers and whatnot, and the town personnel have helped them set up and so forth. So congratulations to you.
Excellent. I'll relay that. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? All right. Without objection, then I will consider us adjourned. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for watching the Town of Lexington Planning Commission in action. This meeting was held at 8 a.m. Wednesday, July 24, 2019, and will be rebroadcast several times throughout the week. On behalf of the Planning Commission, I wish you a good day.